And to share a couple of case studies with you now, I mean, I'm passionate about, everybody is an individual. And, we are funded, like colleagues and like probably some of yourselves, through a whole host of different funding cocktails. We're funded through European Regional Development Funding, we're funded through North West Development Agency, we're funded through coalfields, we're funded through Working Neighbourhoods funds, we've had kind of money through Job Centre Plus ESF contracts. And yeah, we all have to play the numbers game. Yes, we all have to kind of, be able to justify the targets that we've been set, that we've achieved these targets, we've exceeded these targets. But behind each and every one of these kind of outputs is a person, as I said earlier. And I would like to share an example of 3 people with you who we've supported. One is a chap called Kenneth, who, when a colleague of mine met him, he was actually homeless. He was living in a tent at St. Bees, and St. Bees is quite a nice place, but believe you me, when that Irish sea wind gets up, you wouldn't want to be in a tent there. And Kenneth, 12 months prior to actually meeting Hose, had been the manager in the local Costa coffee shop. He'd had a flat, he had a partner, his mum lived down the road, everything was fine. Within the space of 12 months, his partner had got pregnant, they'd lost the baby, his mum had died, he'd started taking kind of a cocktail of drink and drugs and whatever because he was depressed, and he actually ended up homeless. We met him and he was like so depressed, etc. It was unbelievable, but with working with him, with working collectively with colleagues from Job Centre Plus, with others, we were able to get him a live-in position in a local hotel in Keswick. And it's the King's Arms Hotel in Keswick, actually. I mean, he works there now, and to be honest, he's like Basil Fawlty. He's everywhere. He's on the reception, he's behind the bar, he's kind of everywhere. He's virtually like one-man band running this hotel. But it's brilliant to see someone like him, rebuild themselves because he had potential. And, people will say people who were homeless, they're down and out, etc. He wasn't. He was just a guy who had had one bad thing happen to him after another. And then we've talked about, incapacity benefit. West Cumbria being an area of industrial decline, we were one of the kind of areas where I used to work in the job centre. And as Job Centre Plus frontline staff, we were actually actively encouraged to divert people from job seekers. Well, it wasn't job seekers allowance, it was a different benefit then, but we were actually actively encouraged to divert people from benefits onto incapacity benefit so that they didn't come up as a statistic on the government statistical indicators. So we have many people, many men in particular, who from the age of about 35, 40 saw themselves as being too old for work. We had people who had kind of wrote themselves off. And one bloke, Thomas, who we've supported into employment, he'd been unemployed for over 10 years when he came to us, and we were able, through a package of wage subsidies, etc., to be able to secure him a position in construction. The employer himself has openly admitted that through mainstream provision, he wouldn't have kind of employed Thomas. He would have just been too much of a risk. But he's actually one of the best employees that he has. And he's openly came out and said in a consultants report, which we've had commissioned, that, we can send as many Thomases to him as we possibly can find because he's one of the best employees that he's got. And then finally, to share with you what's really, I believe, one of the biggest success factors that we've ever had is Sharon. And Sharon Stamper's a woman who, about 10 years ago, was a serious drug addict. Her life was chaotic. She's a DNS resident. At one time, her tenancy was under threat because of her antisocial behaviour. All she could think about was where she was getting her next fix. Sharon's got 3 kids. Their life was really chaotic. They were living between a mother, her auntie, etc., anybody who would kind of look after them because her life was so chaotic, often she couldn't. She lived with domestic violence and she thought that was the norm. She thought that she deserved a hiding. To be honest, that was her lot in life. She turned a corner after having some bad gear, basically, and ended up in hospital and felt that really, she needed to be there for her children. Sharon was supported through a partnership with Job Centre Plus and ourselves through a project which we've got, and we were able to support her into becoming into self-employment. She went on a 6 months wage subsidy programme, And I'm really, really proud to say that she's now self-employed. She's a neuro-linguistic counsellor. She's a life skills coach. And when you see her today, it's just unbelievable, you know, from this woman who basically, you know, had no belief in herself. That, I mean, she would quite happily come here and, you know, stand up and tell us how to do it, really. So, you know, that they are kind of, I can't stress enough, you know, that the outputs, the targets are great, but it's the people behind them. And just to finish off, I would echo the words of David that, you know, without sustainability of funding, then all of the Kenneths, you know, the Sharons, the Thomases, and all of the other people that we have been able to support by developing this bespoke package of support are going to be left to their own devices. And if we think it's bad now, it will only really get worse. So I think collectively we've got to all work together to make sure that worklessness isn't seen as being something that's on the sidelines and isn't seen as the poor, you know, tackling worklessness, isn't seen as being the poor relation, but it's taken seriously by kind of our local authorities, the government and others. Thanks very much for that.